Hi, and welcome or welcome back. I'm Jayne Turk, and this is Interpersonal Communication. So today we're going to start kind of at the very beginning. We're going to look at the reflective self-concept. We're going to look at praise, bragging, and introductions. So before we dive into the material of it, I want you to think for a minute. When do you think you first started acquiring a self-concept? So think it was something that happened when you were 2 or 3 or 13. Those might have been some of your guesses, and they're good ones. The answer is probably a couple days after you were born. So when you first started to see a cause and effect relationship. So if you cried and someone responded to you, you felt like you mattered. And we can even see newborn babies giving a cry a test and see if somebody responds. And if they don't, they might try again or they might stop. In fact, I think one of the saddest things is that studies have found that orphanages are often silent because there aren't enough people to attend to babies' cries, so babies stop crying. Now, I'm not saying this so that if you're a parent who has more than one kid or more than one obligation at a time, that if you don't respond immediately to your baby's cry, that you're being a bad parent. I am saying that it's super important that we treat all the people that we care about by responding to them to the ability that we can. So that is how you begin to first develop your sense of self-concept. So we're going to take a look at the reflective self-concept. And it starts, not surprisingly, with this idea of ourself. And we're going to get back to why this is a circle. So think about those things that you hold true about yourself. I am shy, which may surprise some of you. I love to read. I think I'm kind. All of those things are part of your self-concept. Now, what's really fascinating to me is that there are things that you believe about yourself that aren't true. Some of them maybe used to be true, and you've held on to that idea for a long time. Think of things that are rooted in maybe childhood nicknames. Some of them maybe were never true, but that you were unfairly compared to a group of people. And that unfair comparison group makes you think that either you're way better than you are, maybe the Dunning-Kruger effect, or maybe that you are not as good as you are. And I think that we see that imposter syndrome coming out a lot because we're comparing ourselves to people who have significantly more experience and expertise than we do. So whatever you hold to be true about your self-concept is going to a large extent determine your behavior. And so when we're talking about your behavior, we're talking about the way, of course, that you act. And that is, of course, something you control. So if I think of myself as shy, how am I going to behave at parties? And I want you to think about that. If you think of yourself as an extrovert, how do you behave at parties? If you think of yourself as shy, how do you behave? If you think of yourself, and let's go back to elementary school, if you think of yourself as stupid, how do you behave? If you think of yourself as smart, how do you behave? And all of these behaviors then have consequences, and those consequences in the short term are other people's reactions. So if I think of myself as shy, I might withdraw, sit by myself, be quiet at a party. And other people are probably going to respond by not having a lot of interaction with me. If I think of myself as stupid in class, I am probably not going to volunteer to answer questions. I am probably not going to spend a lot of time doing homework because why bother? I might become a class clown. And so when the teacher calls on me in class, instead of answering the question or trying to answer the question and getting it wrong, I might fart. Everybody laughs. The teacher moves on to somebody else because I'm disruptive. And and so that cycle continues. If I feel smart in class, I'm going to be raising my hand. I'm going to be taking guesses even when they're wrong because I have the confidence to overcome that. And so if you think about whatever that self-concept is, it's going to lead to certain specific behaviors, which are going to lead pretty predictably to other people's reactions. And what's up next is our interpretation of events. And so if other people ignore me at the party, I'm going to say, I don't like parties. If other people laugh at me in the classroom when I make inappropriate jokes, I'm going to think, I don't like school, but I can get away with it if I'm funny. If I take risks and people give me praise for trying, I might think, hey, school is my place, or this kind of a job is my place. So my interpretation of events is going to be formulated from other people's reactions, and then it's going to reinforce my self-concept. And so this cycle goes on and on and on. So let's talk about a couple of things about this being a cycle. Because it's a cycle, it's interruptible. Because it's a cycle, we can change one thing and it can change other things all the way through. And so just saying, I've thought of myself as not smart for decades. I'm going to today choose to think of myself as smart. Really hard to do. Is doable? Absolutely. Does therapy help? Absolutely. Easier to change is probably your behavior. And this is where we get the fake it till you make it. So this is where we get the idea that I'm going to change my behavior short term, and then it's going to change other people's responses, and then change my interpretation of events, and eventually lead to changing my self-concept. And this can be good advice as long as you're faking it short term. So the deal I make with myself is I'm going to go to a social event. If I am not genuinely enjoying myself in 30 minutes, I have permission to leave. And that takes a lot of stress off me. I don't have to think, oh my God, I'm going to have to bear through this event for hours and hours and hours and hours that I'm not enjoying myself. And because I've freed myself from that pressure, I can come out of my shell for a few minutes and smile, introduce myself to somebody, start things off on the right foot. And if it doesn't work, I can go home and watch a movie, read a book, and no shame. So it takes a lot of that pressure off of me. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get into the habit of faking it all of the time with everyone, because then you no longer know who you are, and you no longer really believe that people like you for yourself. So you're always then feeling super insecure and super imposter syndrome. And so I would say, you can give it a shot, but be aware that you are imitating somebody else who's successful in this situation, that you are giving yourself a chance to grow and feel more comfortable and enjoy situations that you might not otherwise enjoy. So changing your behavior is the quickest and easiest way to interrupt this cycle. I'm going to skip to your interpretation of events. So not the quickest, not the easiest, but certainly something you can sit back and reflect on and say, wait a minute, are there other ways to see this chain of events? So I've had some pretty crappy things happen in my life, like I'm sure every single one of you has had. At one point, I got a stalker who threatened me and my family, and I was forced to walk away from a career I loved. And maybe forced is too strong a word. That was a choice I made because it was the choice that felt the safest at the time. I was bitter and resentful at first. And it's okay to feel those feelings. It's okay to be angry when bad things happen. It's also okay to feel grief. It's okay to feel what you feel. it helped me to feel better by, after working through those feelings of anger and grief, to sit down and say, okay, is there a silver lining? Is there something that I'm getting out of this that I would not have otherwise encountered? And for me, there were a lot of them. For me, it meant time that I got to spend with my kids that I wouldn't have been able to, staying in that career and that space and time. It meant that I got to experience a brand new career that I would never have had the courage to explore. It meant that I got to meet a lot of really fabulous people and learn a lot of really fabulous things. In fact, ultimately, it probably has given me the confidence to do this. And so I'm not saying that you want to Pollyanna everything and say, okay, I'm not going to experience bad things, but I am saying that sometimes it can be helpful to look at what your gifts were in that situation. Richard Bach said that we seek problems because we need their gifts, and that quote has been really helpful for me. So can you change your interpretation of events? Can you see a bad thing as having good consequences? And embrace both of those meanings simultaneously. So this was a bad thing, and it had good consequences. And that can help you see things differently and feel differently about who you are as a result of that. Okay, let's talk for a minute about other people's reactions. This is a tough one. The longer you have history with somebody, the more that their reactions are based on that history and not on who you are today. So we're going to talk later on this term about first impressions, and I want to say that first impressions are wildly inaccurate for all kinds of reasons. And yet, they allow you to be the new you. So, if I have always been the person who doesn't take risks in the friend group, and then I'm taking a risk, my friend group might not acknowledge that. My family might not acknowledge that. If I have struggled for years with alcohol, drug, food addictions, and I'm trying to change those behaviors, unfortunately, it's going to be hard for my family and friend groups to support the new me. They might want to. They also might not want to. But it's going to be hard for them to see who I am today, because they're going to see echoes of the me that they know. And in fact, even in their attempts to support the new me, they may unwittingly be reinforcing the old version of myself I'm trying to step away from. So I'm saying a couple of things here. I'm saying, one, it's helpful to be transparent. Tell people that you love, that you spend time with, hey, I'm making this effort and I really need you to support me and to see the new me without making a big deal about it. And if you can't support, for instance, my path to getting clean from drugs, then you need to spend less time with those people. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, there's this teacher I have or this podcast I just followed, and she said that I need to kick you all out of my life, so I'm going to do that. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying that if the people that you spend time with don't support the best version of you, don't help you to be the best version of you, draw different boundaries. That might mean spending less time with them. It might mean spending no time with them. Those are decisions you have to make for you in a way that's healthy for you. And it might be a temporary thing. It might be, well, sobriety's new to me. I am not going to spend time with people that I used to enjoy getting wasted with. And 6 months down the road, when sobriety no longer feels like such a struggle, maybe you spend a little time with them and see how it feels. I do want to say that other people's reactions are the hardest part of getting to be, getting to embrace, getting to live the new, authentic you. But they can also be the most rewarding. And so one of the hard things that we encounter as adults is finding new friend groups. Many of you have moved places where you don't have friends yet, and that's a struggle. And I encourage you to reach out in ways to find people that embrace the best parts of you, because that's where you get to feel the best about yourself and to feel the most authentic about yourself. Okay, so as we go through this cycle, and I want to just kind of go through it really quickly again. If I see myself as super successful, as super motivated and go-getting, I'm probably going to have a to-do list that I check off, and I'm going to feel accomplished as I check those things off. And other people are going to see me check those things off, and they're going to reinforce that. And they're going to say, hey, you're doing a good job. And I'm going to feel great about what I'm doing, and I'm going to feel like I am, in fact, a successful person. Play through this with who the person you want to be and say, okay, if I am this, what's that going to look like? What kind of behaviors is that going to look like? How are other people going to react to that? And if they don't, how do I find the people that are going to be my people, that are going to support me in that journey? How do I then reinforce that interpretation of events and get to believe this new self-concept that actually is accurate and the person I want to be? So one of the ways that we can do that is by bragging. So let's first talk about when you were little. Because when you were little, and I'm going to say you were 2 and don't remember it, and you were 7 and maybe do remember it, it might have been mom who said, don't brag. And that's a pretty firm lesson that most of us have learned throughout our entire lives. And depending on what culture you were raised in, you might have gotten more of these lessons than other people did. And certainly we see that women get more of the don't brag lessons than men do. But we're all told at some point that bragging is a turnoff and that other people aren't going to appreciate it. And they are absolutely correct. So bad bragging is competitive bragging. Bad bragging is saying, I'm better than you are or than other people are. In fact, I'm the best at this. And let me give you an example. If I say to you, I am the best teacher you've ever had, something really fascinating happens in your brain. Now, I'm a damn good teacher. I may, in fact, have been the best teacher you've ever had. But as soon as I make that claim, you are automatically criticizing me in your head. You're automatically finding flaws. You're automatically finding fault. You're automatically thinking of people who are better. If I say, I am the best dressed person on the College of the Siskiyous campus, which, by the way, I am not, you're automatically going to be critiquing my clothing. It's human nature. And so we inspire people when we engage in that bad bragging to bring us down a peg. And it's really unfortunate because often the people who are saying these things are people who are insecure, and it makes it really bad for them because then other people are inspired to put them down. And it becomes this vicious cycle of them feeling worse about themselves and engaging in bad bragging and being knocked down time and time and time again. You probably all know someone like this. I hope you're not someone like this, but you might be. And so that competitive bragging, again, inspires people to put us down and not see our strengths. However, there's good bragging. And good bragging is what I want you to do today and most every day that reinforces that positive self-concept. So good bragging, hopefully, is what you did in your discussion boards, where you talked about things that you liked about your accomplishments, yourself, your looks, your character. And good bragging is not comparing to anybody else. Good bragging is saying, I am proud of myself. I am happy with myself for this. So I said early on in this, part of my self-concept is that I think I'm kind. And I had a student in our Zoom class the other day who said that about me, and thank you. Um, and I can say I did this kind thing. I feel kind because I am engaged in these behaviors, and I'm really happy that I did that thing. I can share my joy, and it comes back to me. So we've known for a long time that if you smile, but not in a creepy way, if you smile at people, they're likely to smile back. And the act of smiling increases your own internal feel-good hormones, your dopamine. And people smiling back at you also increases your dopamine. So good bragging can help our feel-good chemicals get activated. People share in our joy. So good bragging is at the right time and the place, sharing the thing that we did that we feel good about. So when I say, I feel good about this thing, I feel happy, I'm sharing my joy. Other people tend to feel inspired and happy for me. So it reinforces that cycle. In fact, I asked you to read your classmates' comments on their brags and think about how you felt about them. And so here's what I'm asking you. When your classmates bragged on their 3 things, how did you feel? And I'm going to say that you probably felt inspired or happy for them, but you probably weren't activated to put them down because they were good bragging. The results for them when you brag, other people get to feel good about themselves because they get to cheer you on. We like being cheerleaders. We like supporting our friends and the people we care about. And so those things are just nothing but good. When I watch sports interviews, and I watch a lot of them, the thing that I notice the most is the really successful athletes and coaches focus on sharing the glory and focus on giving that positive feedback to everyone. And it feels good to watch them. That's what we want for you. Now, I do want to talk about exceptions. So, I don't know about you, I really struggled in math classes. I can remember the poor math teacher, young guy, in my last attempt at college algebra. And I studied so hard. I tried so hard, had myself all psyched up to take the final exam. And I got to the class, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. I'm just going to read the question. If I don't know the answer, take a deep breath, move on to the next. I got this. So I read the questions. I took lots of deep breaths. I didn't have this. So I started crying, the little trickly tears that evolved into the full, snotty, catching my breath sobs. And to all of my classmates, if you ever find this video, I am so sorry that I did that to you. And to that teacher, bless you, I am so sorry I did that to you. The point of this is if you were in that class with me and we got out afterwards and you're feeling great about how you did on that test, now is not the time to brag. Now is not the time to turn to me with the tear-stained face and the runny nose and say, I did so great on that math test. I am sure I got an A. You can tell somebody else. You can tell me at a different time. Not that, not then. So, yes, we want you to share your glory, and it almost always is a good thing. Just be a little bit sensitive to other people who might be going through things at that time. Okay, so let's talk about how you felt reading your classmates' brags. So I've just finished reading them, and my responses universally were, that is awesome. Some of the brags were small things, and I said that that was perfectly okay. You logged onto Canvas today. Cool. It's a great start. Congrats. An old colleague of mine used to say that it's keeping one spoke in the wheel, that you find that one thing that no matter how depressed you are, how unmotivated you are, that you do no matter what. And so the one that he suggested was to brush your teeth. No matter what, brush your teeth once a day. And you can feel that you accomplished that thing. And I think that's a great one. And you might have more spokes in the wheel when you are feeling stronger, that every day, no matter what, I'm going to brush my teeth, wash my face, and do one task. Or some of you have talked to me about the fact that you make your bed every day. It makes you an accomplishment. It makes it, you feel when you get into bed later on that night that you have accomplished something. So I want to encourage you to do that thing, and encourage you then when you're reading people's brags, when you're hearing their brags, that you give them the support that they deserve. That hey, we're keeping our shit together. We made it through another day together. Congrats. So next I want to know how you felt writing your own. So the thing that makes me sad, one of the things that makes me sad, is that if I'd asked you to write a list of 10 things you don't like about yourself, for many of you, that would have been significantly easier than coming up with 3 brags. And I'm sad about that. And writing those things you feel bad about yourself has every bit as much impact as writing the brags does, just in a bad way. So if I write down that I feel bad about this, that if I write down that I know, well, I just did it again. I know that I've bumped the table and then bumped my camera several times during this video. Damn it. I'm going to feel bad about it. The reality is it probably doesn't matter. And you now notice it because I brought it up, which is the same thing that happens when we complain about a thing about ourselves. So if I comment about this thing about myself that I don't like, you're going to notice it more. So let's go back to thinking about how we felt when we wrote our brags. You might have felt awkward. Again, that lesson that we don't brag is really deeply ingrained. And I want to break you of that habit. I want to encourage you to share your joy, because it makes you feel better in the long run, and it makes us feel better too. And then how did you feel after you posted it? You got it done, you got them written, you posted them. Was it just, got a 5-point assignment done? Or was it, I feel kind of good about this? So share with me those thoughts. And this leads us to introductions, which was another one of our activities. So I want to start by reflecting on the activity. For those of you that have posted your 3 introductory scenarios, I definitely read them. And some of them were amazingly good, and all of them were good. There was not one in there that was like, ooh, bad. Now, in the years of teaching this, I have had some people who unfortunately introduced themselves in ways that were off-putting. So I want us to think about that. And again, we're going to talk more about first impressions, but introductions are definitely part of that first impression formula. So let's talk about our audiences for just a minute and analyzing those audiences. So the first audience that I asked you to respond to was an interviewer. So some of you mentioned your names, and I want to say yes, absolutely. Having done a million interviews, I sometimes struggle to remember who was who. So reinforcing your name in an introduction situation is always a good thing, because most people I know struggle with remembering people's names. So, and I just want to say, it came up in the media this week that it's one of the things that many of us love about Taylor Swift. So one of the most notable famous people of our time still introduces herself and says, "Hi, I'm Taylor." So you too can do that. I mean, don't say, "Hi, I'm Taylor," unless you know that's your name, but definitely reinforce your name. So I'm Janie. And in the first situation, we're talking about jobs. So I'm going to be thinking about, what does my boss want to know about me? They don't want to know that I was born on a dark and stormy night. Um, they want to know things that maybe they don't remember from my resume or my earlier introduction. They want me to remind them of what my experience is. They might want me to say why I'm excited to be there. So I'm going to be thinking about that audience analysis. In the second one, I'm asking you to introduce yourself at a party. So I'm going to assume that these are your peer groups. These are people that you would want to be friends with. And I want you to be analyzing that too. And so I mentioned a minute ago that finding friends as adults can be hard. So you want to be thinking about those people there are also probably looking for friends. And so that's going to tie into goals in just a second. And finally, meeting your significant other's parents. So again, analyzing that audience. And so that significant other's parent or parents, they're looking for someone who's going to be good for their kid, someone that they can trust, and you're going to be adapting to that audience. So let's talk about what your goals are. In the first situation, your goal is maybe not to get the job, but to at least get offered the job. You also want to be thinking about what their goals are. And so their goals are to separate the good candidates from the bad candidates. So they want to make a decision quickly. Studies say that they make that decision within the first 30 seconds, and then they spend the rest of the interview justifying that decision. So if you've made a good first impression, you want to reinforce that first impression. So I am super excited to be here, and I'm the right person for this job because I have these experiences. I'm looking forward to the questions you have for me so I can reinforce that idea. If you're meeting someone at a party, several of you mentioned things that you like to do for fun. I would be even more direct with that. So I could say, I'm really enjoying reading these books by Brett Metzger, and hey, are you interested in being in a book club? Or I really enjoy going on long walks on the beach. Do you like beachcombing? Are you looking for someone that you could go beachcombing with? So absolutely, you can reinforce the things that you're looking for in a friend group. Your goals and their goals, keep those in mind. When you're meeting your significant other's parents, your goal is probably for them to like you, because it will make your relationship easier if your significant other's parents don't dislike you. I will never forget meeting my starter husband's parents, and his dad asked me how bad was my drinking problem, because I'm Irish, so apparently that means I have a drinking problem. And I did a lot of that. I don't know how to answer that question. So hopefully you don't get asked questions like that. But I would be prepared to, so nice to meet you. You've done such a great job raising XYZ person's name. And I just want to thank you for making it possible for me to meet them. That starts things off on the right foot. And then I would talk about, and I want to give you some reassurance that I'm a good person and I'm good for them. And that might be, as many of you said, that you're students, that this is your long-term plan, that you're going to be financially stable, or that you are financially stable, but to reinforce that you respect and appreciate their child. So as you go through life, you're going to have lots of these introductions. Sometimes they're going to be at parties. Sometimes they're going to be in job interviews. Sometimes they're going to be in hallways. I want you to think about the impression that you're making, and I want you to think about appropriately bragging. So if you can say that thing about yourself that we're going to feel good to learn, absolutely do that. Think about what your goals are in these interactions, and think about what their goals are. and that will help you to come up with the best possible answers. And finally, I want to talk about elevator talk. Now, if you Google elevator talk, you're going to come up with probably a sales pitch. And that's kind of right and a little bit wrong. So what we mean by elevator talk in interpersonal communication is that brief moment of forced interaction, one-on-one, with you and another person, often a person in power, that you could waste or you could use to reinforce your positive self-concept. So if I have 30 seconds with my boss, who I adore, I could just say, "Hi, how are you? I'm fine, how are you?" And we could go on our way. Or I could say, "Ooh, good news." And I could brag about something that I've accomplished that she can feel good about in that interaction. And then when she's in a 30-second interaction with one of her supervisors, she can also have that brag to share. So that meets my goals of reinforcing that positive self-image that she has with me, and reinforcing hers as well. And that allows you for the times when those interactions aren't positive, when something's going wrong, when there's been a complaint, when you've screwed up, you have that balancing act. You have all of those memories of those positive interactions and those brags to balance it out. And so it helps you to be more successful. So I'm hoping that as you go forth in your life, that you will be introducing yourself in ways that help you to meet your goals, that help you to set that positive self-concept and reinforce that positive self-image in the minds of other people. And so now that leads us to praise. And I hope you're seeing lots of the same elements loop through here, and certainly loop through in the reflective self-concept model. So I'll give you a minute to look at the delivering and receiving praise elements, and then I'll talk about them. Oh, they're a lot alike. Yeah, they are. So let's talk about delivering praise. So ultimately, delivering praise is about reinforcing behaviors, right? Whether it's your kid cleaned up their toys, it's your spouse emptied the dishwasher, your students did their homework. You want to reinforce those behaviors. So the best way to do that is to be specific. So if I say, "Good job," that's not specific. I mean, it's better than saying, "You suck, I hate you, and I hope you die." It's not a whole lot better, though, because "good job" is, in a way, diminishing the work, and it may indicate that you, in fact, didn't even really know what we did. I will never forget my son working on a project in elementary school that he really cared about. He put a lot of work into it. And school was not his favorite thing in the world, didn't necessarily put forth a lot of effort. He did into this one project. And he ended up typing like a 20-page paper for this class. 3 months later, he got it back, and the only words on it were, "Good job, A-" on the front cover. I am not convinced that his teacher actually read that paper. And many of you would have had the same response he did, which was, "What did I do that was good? And if it was good, why an A-?" And so you want to be specific. What do you want those people to continue doing or do again? Specifically note what it is that they've done. And so if I go and watch you play a sport, afterwards, if it's a sport I understand really well, I can be very specific. So if I watch you play football and I say, "Oh man, you had some really great receptions, and I was super proud of the way that you blocked when it wasn't your turn to receive the ball." If it's volleyball, got no idea. I might say, "Good game," because I totally don't understand what's happening. In fact, there will be at least one point during the game when I'll cheer, and I shouldn't have, and I'll be embarrassed. So the more I know, the more specific I can be. And so I can show that appreciation. I can say, I really appreciate you turning in your papers on time and all the thought you put into those responses. I appreciate you following the directions. I can show impact. I can say to my employees, hey, every one of you has done a great job showing up on time, and that's allowed us to get started on time so we're able to meet the deadlines our customers expected. So that's impact to them. It's impact to me. It's impact to others. Oh, impact to them might also be, and because we did this job on time, everybody gets a bonus. If I say to my grandkids, hey, I really appreciate you cleaning up the house, that meant that we could go to the park, impact to them. It meant that I'm super happy because we got everything done we wanted to do and we get to spend more time together. And impact to others. And the house is clean, so when we get home, we get to get right to dinner and a movie. We're going to have fun. So be thinking when you can show impact. And you can't always, by the way. There won't always be others that you're showing an impact to. But if you can, extend that, do that, be specific. It reinforces the praise. It makes people more likely to do that thing. And it makes you more satisfied with your life. It makes your life easier. So do it. Before I talk about how to receive a praise, I want to jump down to the bottom where it says, do not debate, do not diminish the praise. And holy cow, are we good at this? So if I say, I really enjoyed reading your paper, I can't tell you the number of times students have said, I wrote it at the last minute. I didn't think it was that good. So if you say that to me, my reaction is going to be, oh, maybe I need to be grading harder next time. Maybe I wasn't being as astute as I thought I was when I read it. And that's not the response you want. That is absolutely not the response you want. So instead, I want you to be sure that you are showing appreciation. Thank you for noticing. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. If you use the ASC in writing that paper, say that. If I watched your game and I say, great catch, and you say, I couldn't have done it if I hadn't had all those people on the O-line helping make sure that I got the ball. The quarterback did a really great job throwing it. Share the glory when you can. And then, again, show impact. So it means a lot to me that you came out to my game. It makes it more fun when I know that I have people in the stands cheering me on. Whenever you can, share impact. And again, if I say I like your jacket, don't tell me you bought it on sale, although I appreciate a great sale. Don't tell me it's 1,000,000 years old. You can say, yeah, I like it too. And then we both feel good. So don't discourage people from giving you praise, which is what you do when you argue with them. So that's our conversation today. And I hope that you have picked up some positive feedback, some comments on how to introduce yourself, how to brag, how to give praise, how to receive praise, all of the things that we do to make our self-concept a more positive one and one that is reinforced by other people's responses. Thank you for being on this journey with me. I appreciate you. And I appreciate feedback that you have. So hit me up. Have a great one. Thank you. Bye.